כדאי ליועדוי סילי הליל לשימחו הגודויל ליועדוי סילי הליל מרדן כדי על ניסך ויאל נפלי יסכו ליועדוי סילי הליל מרדן כדי ויאל ישי יסכו ליועדוי סילי הליל מרדן כדי על ניסך ויאל נפלי יסכו.
We're in the week Shechal Bo Chanukah. I'd like to pick on our normal topic, and that is how do things change at Shul? And let's start with the Menorah lighting in Shul. This is not in existence in the Gemara. It is not in existence even in the Rambam. But, as surprising as it sounds, it was a very common minhag going back to the Geonim, through the Rishonim, and the Shulchan Aruch actually says not only to light a menorah in Shul, but to do it with a bracha. So that is what we do. We light a menorah in Shul, and we do it with a bracha. However, there's a machlokas Rishonim why. Some Rishonim say it's because of Pirstumei Nisa. You know, when you live in a certain house sometimes, your window doesn't face the public thoroughfare. And you don't have to move for Chanukah, and therefore you will be sure to publicize the miracle when you're in Shul. Add to this the words of the Rivash that says in their time they couldn't light outside, it was too dangerous. And therefore the only place they can publicize the miracle was in the shuls. Indeed, the best way to publicize a miracle, anything, is to have a minyan there. The Gemara in Ksubos Daf Zayin Amud Bet has an interesting discussion, and it talks about a certain chiddush that a rabbi said, and it says, the Yisaka Dachal Midrash, Lo Sagya de Lavasara. What, you can't say a chiddush without a minyan there? And yes. Why? Lefirsume milta, in order to make it public. If I have a chiddush, it's going to infect the Jewish people. You have to have a minyan there to make it public. As Shmuel said to Rav Chana Begadita, Puk, go out, va'aiti li be'asara, and tell 10 people my chiddush. So, in a word, it's basically a menorah lighting, like the one at home, albeit it's a little different because we know people will look at it. Let's add to this a second position that's brought by the Gra. When the Ra'aya mehalel v'leilei psachim shenitkan ala kos v'amrim bevet hakneset meshum persumei nisa. According to the Gra, even though we say Hallel by the Seder on a cup of wine, we say it in Shul prior, namely at Ma'ariv of Pesach, as per the custom in many shuls, though not all. Shulchan Aruch paskins it, Rama says no. But I would say all the shuls in Israel, outside of Israel divisions, we say Hallel in Shul as a community. And indeed, it's based on Masechet Sofrim that talks about the days we say Hallel, and ultimately says that regarding the first day of Pesach, it's not just Yom Tov Rishon Shel Pesach, but rather lay low. And it adds, Mitzva min ha-muvchar, likro et ha-Hallel b'shnei leilot shel galiyot, and if it's 2 nights of Yom Tov, namely first and second night of Pesach, in a word, you have to thank God as a community and not just as individuals when there is a mitzvah to publicize the miracle. So, says Rav Soloveitchik, as quoted by Rav Shechter, Dekol chovat hayachid every time we have an individual obligation to publicize a miracle, it becomes a communal obligation as well. In order to have even more publication of the miracle. So unlike the Rivash that said maybe some of us can't publicize the miracle, comes along the Gra and Be'ikvotav on his heels, Rav Soloveitchik, and says no. Actually, anytime there's an obligation to publicize the miracle, and we have 3 such mitzvot, Chanukah, Purim, and Pesach, the Arba Kosot specifically, then there's also a communal obligation to do it as a shul. And therefore we light Chanukah candles in shul on Chanukah. We go out of our way to find a minyan for Megillah reading. And on the night of Pesach, even though each and every person at their Seder says Hallel, we say Hallel as a minyan in Shul prior. This is not the opinion of other Rishonim. Other Rishonim say it's Dumya the Mikdash. It's like the Beis HaMikdash. Since the Shul is a small temple, and this miracle happened in the temple, we reenact it by not only lighting at home, but lighting in our small temple, namely in our local shuls. Now, these explanations are very, very nice, but we can only say that they have validity if we can find a halachic ramification between them. Namely, A, the Rivash saying it's a way to publicize the miracle, especially for those that can't do it at home. B, the Gra says that regardless what you do at home, the bottom line is that you have to publicize the miracle as a community when there's an obligation to publicize a miracle. And number 3, Dumya the Mikdash, we're reenacting what they had in the temple, and the closest thing we have are our small temples, our Mikdashei Me'at, meaning our shuls. Is there a ramification between these explanations, or at the end of the day, it's a menorah lighting, it's in shul, there's no difference? So we're going to, at this point, put aside the Gra. We'll deal with that next time, and we'll deal with the 2 explanations. Namely, A, the manhig that says that it's Dumya de Mikdash, reenacting what was in the temple, and B, the Rivash that says it's a way to publicize the miracle for those that can't do it at home. What's the ramification? So here it is. 1, can you light a menorah without a minyan in shul? If, say, Friday night when we have to light the menorah early and no one's come to mincha on time, you can't light the menorah if there isn't a minyan there, because it's as good as lighting a menorah at home. If it's for Persumei Nisa, to publicize the miracle, says Rav Yaakovim, then you can't light a menorah there. And la dik bracha imen shamasar b'beit hakneset v'karov beinai she bracha lavatala. It's absolutely blessing in vain. Why? The Persumei Nisa lo sagya de lavasara. The whole idea is to publicize the miracle. Without a minyan, you do not publicize the miracle. But if you say it's Dumya de Mikdash, just reenacting what was in the temple, then you are reenacting what was in the temple. You're lighting a menorah. In the temple, there wasn't 10 people necessarily there when the Kohen lit the menorah. So do in shul, and indeed the Ramah paskins at an Erev Shabbos, when you usually light the menorah earlier than usual. He says, Yesh nodim nadik b'Erev Shabbos koved mincha. And from this perspective, there's no problem because you're just reenacting what was in the temple. Next ramification, placement. Where do you place the menorah in shul? So at home, if you light it at the door, you have the mezuzah on the right, the menorah on the left, and we publicize the miracle. Where do you light it in shul? So if it's a reenactment of what was in the temple, the Gemara in Baba Basra says that the menorah was in the south, and therefore it's no surprise that the Trumat Hadeshen says that in shul, since the reason for lighting the menorah is Dumya de Mikdash, to make a reenactment of the temple, Matlikin bebeit hakneset letzad harom zecher lamenorah, and that's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins b'kitzur menichol bekotot harom ub'trom hamenorah. And the Mishnah Berurah explains, Zeicher LaMenorah shemekoma b'mikdash badarom. But if you say no, it's to publicize the miracle. Then the Hagaot Rabbeinu Peretz on the Smak says, in Beveit HaKnesset Matlikim Biyamin, the Leika Mezuzah. In Shul, you light it on the right side of the door, because there's no mezuzah going into a shul. Shul doesn't need a mezuzah. So from this perspective, he sees the menorah lighting in shul as a means just to publicize the miracle. Therefore, you don't have to reenact the temple, and therefore you don't have to put it on the south side as if it was like in the temple. When do you light the menorah? If it's for Pesumei Nisa, to publicize the miracle, then ultimately it probably should be around the same time you light at home. But if the reason is not to publicize the miracle, but to make it like in the temple, then when did they light the menorah in the temple? They lit the menorah in the temple after bringing the afternoon Tamid sacrifice, namely around the time of late afternoon into sunset. In a word, after mincha, earlier than we do it at home, because the reason is not to do a menorah lighting in shul like at home, but rather to do a menorah lighting like in the Beit HaMikdash. Lehalacha, it seems like we have a machlokes on this issue, and each shul should do whatever they usually do.